And we are back. We are the coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media, broadcasting live, I say, on the streets of La Prave, the city we love, the naked city, the city with 1,000 stories. And if you're downtown tonight, this is the PBD Fest this evening. Despite a little tough weather a couple hours ago, the city again is alive with people. Here, 90 Way Boston Street, I can see everything that matters in Rhode Island. I can see our friends UMelt down the street. I can see the crumbling facade. Truly a metaphor for Rhode Island of the Superman building just a few blocks away. And of course, I can see all of you. Over the coming weeks, I hope all of you will take an opportunity if you're downtown here on Friday night, 6 to 9 o'clock. Bring your signs, bring your protests. I want to see it all. Let's make the city streets of Providence come alive. And of course, this is one of my favorite segments of our show. And by the way, the show obviously is in development. We went from a 1-hour radio format, audio only, where we were routinely interrupted by commercials, things like that. Uninterrupted format where we're able to really get into a conversation, into the nitty-gritty. Uninterrupted, if you will. And we can do that because of the support of vendors like iServices LLC. iServices LLC, iServices.com. You'll find their link here on the Coalition Radio website and on our rebroadcast of this segment. They are Rhode Island's leading provider of internet and IT services, help desk solutions, wiring, fighting spyware, website development, networking issues. Take a moment. Please support vendors who support independent media. More about them in a moment. If in fact you'd like to sponsor a segment here on the Coalition, reach out to us on our website at coalitionradio.us or on the Mighty Mighty Twitter at coalition_radio. We need and we appreciative of your support. Again, iServices LLC. So, of course, none other. Who would be most appropriate this week? Of course, we're talking about the Gina Raimondo Political Hall of Shame, our third inductee, would have Speaker of the House, Nicholas Mattiello. Now, of course, why do we call this the Gina Raimondo Hall of Shame? So many reasons. I could take up 3 hours. And if you've listened to me over the last year or so, there's times when seemingly I have. But if you were going to create a award that reflected individual contributions from tone-deaf politicians blatantly engaging in self-interest, who better to name it after than our governor, who despite 2 years, only being in office 2 years, and to many it may seem like a generation, who for some, their disappointment in Hillary Clinton not winning the presidency was in fact the wake-up call the next morning when we realized that Gina was not going to win. Gina, the immortal coalition retort, which is, Gina Raimondo, how can we miss you if in fact you won't go away? So when it comes to tone-deaf, self-absorbed, self-interested politicians who live in their own world, who see the voters really as a necessary annoyance with which to maintain her administration and develop her future hopes and dreams at the expense of the average everyday working Rhode Islander, well, who comes to mind but Nick Mattiello. So this week, after much was promised during the campaign, we were treated to a car tax revision. Now, I'm not going to get into the weeds on this because let me tell you, this is possibly some of the most vile, regurgitated pablum that I've seen spew from a legislature in a legislature that's seemingly incapable of anything but pablum. In the run-up to the election, based on clearly the threat of a Republican, Steve Frias, Speaker Mattiello had to come up with something. Now, I often draw the analogy between Rhode Island politics and the State House, and as we like to call it, Halitosis Hall. Of course, all deference and respect to Rudy Cheeks, the grand master of political satire in this state. I often draw the metaphor of a high school cafeteria. So the notion that the speaker would come up with a promise to eliminate the car tax struck many as the moral equivalent of promising more pizza days and less homework over at your local high school, and based in just as much reality. Because ultimately, here's the central premise. Over a protracted period of time, we're going to charge you less on this onerous tax on personal automobiles. Now, as someone who sincerely believes that taxation is theft, you would expect me to applaud that. And my first reaction was, well, okay, doing the campaign promise thing. Yikes, who'd have thought? That whisper-thin victory promised on the morning after the election based on mail votes that hadn't been counted, I guess inspired and created a sort of a sense of fear, or maybe an obligation to the electorate. Well, here's the first problem. If you're going to cut taxes, you got to cut the budget. If anybody can point to any sincere effort at budget cutting, either here at the City of Providence or on the state level, please reach out to me. Please reach out and touch. Please correct me. But where does the money come from? We're still talking about the potential for a special legislative session to provide financial support to billionaires. Oh, that's right, we call it Pawtucket Red Sox. By the way, anyone see irony in a self-described progressive Democratic governor who supports tax breaks for the rich? Anybody see the irony in a mayor of Pawtucket who claims to be a Democrat, claims to be working on behalf of the common man and woman, supporting tax breaks for the rich? Does corporate welfare mean anything to you? That we're talking, at least the governor, in one of several faces she's displayed on this issue, and that's why we named the award after her, thinks it's a great deal for the state and city of Rhode Island, City of Pawtucket to subsidize $38 million, all irony intended. Where's that money going to come from? The governor continues to push her ham-fisted plan to support free tuition for 2 years to qualifying Rhode Islanders. Where's that money going to come from? The City of Providence is proposing, again, to go to the borrowing well and borrow millions of dollars. Where's the debt service from that going to come? Opponents of the tolling legislation have made it very, very clear that there's no guarantee of even revenue neutrality based on the giveaways the governor had to make based on the obscenity of Rhode, based on the expense of installing these gantries, based on hyperinflated expectations of what will be drawn. Where's the money going to come from? That's the question. Shockingly, the city of Cranston appears to be one of the primary beneficiaries of said tax relief with regard to the car tax in its primary stages. Of course, at that point, I'll channel the immortal Peter Lorre and saying, I'm shocked. The city of Cranston, what a coincidence. And while on a basic level, I admire the fact that the speaker is attempting to address the hideous system with which taxes are arrived at. By the way, I did a little fact-checking this week. My good friend Rob Cody was on last week, and he talked about the board that meets on a regular basis. So, talk about a political driver's ed film. This group gets together a couple times a year and just, rubber stamps the law. So where is the money going to come from that? Let's look at the methodology in which this is passed. Yikes. No prior notice given to town clerks, many of whom have already issued tax bills. no legwork, no infrastructural needs analysis. This is the political equivalent of, come on, Judy, let's do a show. I was starting to get grief because it almost slipped through the cracks. I almost got away with the fact that I didn't have to meet this campaign promise. But here's the more intriguing part. I applaud the Senator Ruggiero's decision not to rush, or at least not yet rush, legislation enabling Pawtucket Red Sox Stadium subsidies to billionaires sponsored by Democratic politicians. Based on the lack of time available to do a proper and thorough vetting of said legislation. Of course, my applause. He's right. He's absolutely right. I hope they stick with it. And maybe I'll utter or echo my good friend Paul Roselli's notion, the notion of winning. Maybe, as much as I'd like to see it not happen during a special legislative session, maybe that's what it's going to finally take. Just like a thorough vetting and a thorough rejection of Invenergy has to take place, maybe what we finally need to have is this sort of, as they would say in high school English, cathartic moment in the state, where we thoroughly vet Pawtucket Red Sox Stadium in a special session. But how is it that the leadership of the Rhode Island legislature determined that there was not enough time to thoroughly vet Pawtucket Stadium, again, yet there was time to take this measure and push it through? Has there been a proper vetting and discussion and analysis, public hearings? And yet allegedly the session's over. So my question is this much ado over nothing? I firmly believe that the governor's attempt to pass free tuition was a sop thrown to the progressive Democrats in the hopes that the progressive Democrats, who by the way have shown considerable political backbone in the state in objecting to her craven desires, could they distract, buy them off? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think they're that easy. I think they would love free tuition, and that's one of the areas that I disagree with them. Good people of goodwill can disagree and get together and work forward on other issues. But I believe it was just a ploy, in the same way that the current legislation probably has no chance of moving forward. I've been wrong before. But it's all of the above. The inability to pay for it. The inability to cut taxes across the board so that all Rhode Islanders can take part in a government that is fair to all. The crazy notion that we could shove this through a legislator at the last moment, the inability to have done any of the legwork necessary, stinks to high heaven. And that's, folks, why Nick Mattiello this week is a recipient of the iServices LLC Gina Raimondo induction into the Gina Raimondo Political Hall of Shame. Thanks for listening. Again, we're going to take a quick break. You are listening to the Coalition on the Worldwide Coalition Radio Network, broadcasting live on the Go Local Live Network, 90 Darn Street, here in the streets of the city we love. CoalitionRadio.us, Facebook.com/CoalitionRadio, on the Mighty Mighty Twitter at the Coalition_Radio. Coming up, we're going to have another quick session on Invenergy with some guests who are going to discuss Woonsocket and the reaction, and then introducing a new segment later in the hour. We've got folks coming on from my favorite magazine in the world, Reason.com, and what I hope will be a regular segment 3 to 4 times a month where individual contributors to Reason will join us live here, either by phone, by Skype, or occasionally in studio to talk about the issues of the day. But folks, stay tuned. We'll be right back.